everybody. Thank you. Thank you for staying. Oh my God, nothing's worse than walking in and everybody's walking out. So thank you. Oh my goodness.
Well, Sharon, thank you so much for joining us and being here for this screening. What's it like being back at this college for you? Tell us about your relationship. I know you have a very special relationship with this place. So
yeah, about 400 years ago, I attended this college. And I was telling Daniel, when I came to Innis, I was one of the first people in my dad's family who went to university. And so there's no way I would have told them. I didn't even know you could study film. Like, he would have laughed anyway, you know. So I came and I was studying political science. And I remember sort of seeing like people walking around in this college, mostly like white guys with long hair. You know, this was in the 90s. And watching really obscure kind of films, but I had no reference for it. And when I was choosing my college, I remember it was like Innis, oh my God, Trinity, blah, blah, blah. And Innis, because it was film, I was like, oh, I'm gonna go to Innis. Even though I wasn't gonna do film, I had no idea. So coming back here, 400 years later, it's emotional for me because I know that one, that I graduated from university and my dad would be proud. And two, that, I don't want to sound like a cliche, but that you can actually do it. Like, you can actually study what you want and make a career out of it and tell the stories that I want to tell.
So if Sharon back then could see Sharon now, what do you think that Sharon would say?
She'd be like, girl, I love your outfit. Love that pink outfit. I think she would say, I think she would say, you can do it. I see my son over there and my partner, and I think that that's the gift that I'm giving to him, that you can actually do it. He's in media arts. I tried not to get him in media arts. Yeah, but he's in media arts. But yeah, that you can do it. So him seeing me up here is huge for me.
And are there lessons or stories or moments that you take from your time here that you've carried through the years with you?
At Innis?
Yeah.
That's interesting. You know, I'm going to answer that honestly. Here's the deal, is that most of the work that I do outside of my own work is I work in film and television, so I often am on sets. And it's often like when I went to Innis, it's a lot of tall white guys with long hair, you know, and I'm the only woman of color. A lot of times I'm the only woman of color. There's a lot more women. And I think in a weird way, navigating that terrain helps me to navigate that terrain now, you know?
That's wonderful. The whole context is what enables you to do your job now.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Maybe let's
Daniel.
talk a little. No problem. Maybe let's talk a little bit about this documentary.
Yeah.
How did this documentary come to be? It's a really interesting and small intersection between the Christian community, the queer community.
Yeah.
And you chose to focus in on that. Oh, not small. Okay.
It's not small.
Say more. Say more.
Yeah, say more.
Well, when I first came out myself, I actually was more concerned about how my Christian friends would respond. And a lot of them were really great about it. And I've discovered since then that there are like queer Christians all over the place. And they're just not all in your face yet. Like, there's a lot of people who are just kind of quietly there.
Right. So you've seen actually more community than you might have thought. And perhaps than I even suggested earlier in my comment. That's great. That's great.
Was because, are you talking about that sort of idea that, which is what the movie's exploring, you can't be queer and Christian, right? Because this idea of a colonial church, colonial Christianity, for me anyway, that's what I wanted to explore is, are we able to find solace and spirituality even knowing that that institution has caused so much pain? And I think I felt guilty about being positive about the church.
You felt guilty.
Yeah, well, like when I was doing the doc, I was like, oh my God, like this is a colonial institution, and And so it was really important. There's a Winnie who's in there, who's a Anglican priest, it was really important for me to have her voice front and center because she has found some peace being within a homophobic institution and a colonial institution, to be queer and to spread that message. And she loves Jesus and she loves God and she's unashamed about it. And when I was coming out, I didn't see that.
What did you see?
It was sort of like you go to Church Street and you go to clubs. That's what coming out was. It was mostly representation of white gay men, and there definitely wasn't like, come to church and be queer. That there wasn't that like, definitely not that message. I was going to a Baptist church in Brampton, and when I was a kid, and you went there to get ice cream. Like that's how they got you on the bus. Yes. They gave you ice cream, and you got on the bus. But yeah, there was definitely no coming out there.
So what was it like for you to experience moments of joy or see, because you've come to a place where now you can present an entire documentary that focuses on joy. So personally for you, what was that discovery like?
Yeah, I appreciate that because I really wanted this film to be infused with joy, but I also wanted to pay respect to the trauma and the pain that people have gone through. And so it's a balance of both, I hope, and I'm dying to get to them, aren't you? Yeah, me too. Like, did I do that? Did you feel like it was a balance of both? And also I'll say this, I made a conscious decision not to just do a series of coming out stories that really re-traumatized. So I just kept trying to balance that. And when I first started it, it was going to be about conversion therapy. And when we went to Jamaica and when I went to the BIPOC community in LA and New York, it felt like conversion therapy in the way that it's presented in Hollywood or that we know it, which is going to camps and that kind of thing, isn't how most of the BIPOC people were experiencing it. So I wanted to embrace their experience without that language.
I'd like, if we have questions, just raise your hand. I think we can incorporate questions into the overall discussion as we're going along here. So if anyone does have a question, just raise your hand and let us know, please. So the question is, in the scenes with Winnie up front in the church, Sherry DeNova was right there. Was that an intentional decision, or is that just how it played out? Is that the question? Yeah.
No, she didn't happen to be there. We definitely invited people to Winnie's sermon, and Sherry accepted, and she sat in the front. I mean, we didn't make her sit in the front, or not make her sit in the front. Yeah, she just sat in the front.
How did the entire documentary come to be? Some people might want to know about that.
So I did a documentary on Daniel. And that documentary was called Disruptor Conductor, and he's an amazing classical conductor. And he was doing a show, the first orchestral drag show with Thorgy Thor. And so it was orchestra and Thorgy Thor, and we went to Nova Scotia. It was brilliant. It was really, really fun. And we started having conversations. I think that I have been and still am struggle with being a Christian and the word Christian. And so we started having those conversations, and I just wanted to explore it more. And then Maurice, who you saw in the documentary, who it was the first gay pride march in Montego Bay. Him and I started talking, and then the producer and I were like, we got to go to Jamaica and document this. This is huge that he's doing it. And then it just sort of unraveled. We met Jessica, and yeah.
Were you ever in danger when you were in Jamaica? I've always wanted to ask that.
I think yes, but I think given my privilege that I can leave Jamaica and that I present as straight, that the people who were really in danger were those who were marching. Like there was more guns than marchers, and the parade just started getting shorter. So at one point it was like from here to like Bloor Street, and then it was from here to half, and then it was from here to the end of this theater. Like it just got smaller and smaller and smaller. But those people were brave. They have to live in Jamaica. They have to deal with the consequences. But there was also so much joy and so much community. Like there was danger, but there was so much joy and community. We'd go to dances afterwards. So there's a hotel, Hotel Gloriana, I will plug it, in Jamaica, and she hosted all the parties, sort of in the back. You had to go through security, and you had to go down these stairs and all of this, but we had this space in the back that we could go to.
So here's a question about the process of filmmaking and interviewing. In a documentary like this, you're dealing with a really sensitive topic, a really sensitive intersection in people's lives. How do you keep everybody safe? How do you keep yourself safe? How do you keep the people that you're working with safe? And are there principles, or what could you share with us about that?
Well, I think that the DP was not Jamaican, and so at one point we were in the club, and he didn't know what anybody was saying to him. So, he sort of ran out, and he was like, I don't know what, so can you come in and interpret? And I did, and I think those sort of relationships, making relationships, I think that, what I struggle with is that there were some participants that spoke to me about how much danger they were in and how they needed help to get out, and how much help I could provide and to how many people I could provide help to. That, I think, is the moral dilemma of doing a documentary like this, making sure that I'm responsible and keeping them safe while we're doing the doc, which is one thing, but also making sure I'm not re-traumatizing and bringing up stuff and then saying, thanks, great, got the clip, and leave. So for me, it meant spending time and talking and having a relationship and knowing and giving them the permission that they could say no to anything.
And this is something that Sharon does really well, having worked with her and having been interviewed by her quite a lot, is giving people the permission to say no and helping people feel free, that you will respect their boundaries. That's something that you do really, really well that I've experienced, I think, and I imagine that many of the subjects here experienced as well too, because I think that's one of your great gifts. You should know that.
Although I will say this, when Daniel said no, he's like no, I was like, do you want to talk about no? What about if that no? Okay, cool. So
well, you gave me permission, so maybe.
Yes, I gave you permission. It's
so
true.
How did the process of doing this, did it change you? Did you learn anything new in the process of making this documentary?
Yeah, I fell in love with Maurice's dad. Maurice's dad he struggles and he's imperfect, but he loves his son. And Maurice's mom passed away not long after we did the doc. But I think what I saw in him was how he saw his son, and it was complicated. It wasn't easy, but it was complicated. And I know this sounds cliche, but love won in the end. His love for his son wins over the ideas that the church had put in his head about whether or not he should be accepting his son. So, I think I learned about love and perseverance, and
And if there were, I'll ask one more question, then maybe take a question here. If there were to be a director's cut that we would watch right now, what would you put in? What did you leave out that you wish was still there? What other treats would there be for us in this director's cut?
oh, that's so good. Yes. Oh, Daniel. I would put in the DP eating too much spicy food and having diarrhea for so long.
Wow.
It was
that's
so
a strong
funny.
Choice.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. But it was funny. He couldn't shoot. He was like, and he'd put down the camera, and I was like, we have to shoot. There's only, anyway, that was funny. To me, obviously. But yeah. But there were things like that, there were silly things that happened that I had to make sure either put them in or not put them in, because I didn't want to disrespect the stories that are happening. But I also, that's why D-Lo is in there. D-Lo I've known for years, and we flew him up from LA, and he did that whole piece because I felt like we need to see ourselves with some levity. I just don't want to see ourselves as just trauma. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's have this question at the rear. Question at the rear there. The microphone's coming right there. Yeah.
Thank you. Sharon, I'm really curious. I don't know if this is an answerable question, but it's the question that occurs to me. Can you kind of compare and contrast your experiences of being an underrepresented person in so many different ways in your industry. First as a person, well, as a person of color, as a woman, and as a person of faith.
So what do you want to know? Like how hard it is, or just what that experience is like? Yeah. Funny that you say that, because a person of faith, I don't know that I've ever identified myself like that. So that's interesting, even though I just did this documentary. And weird, I think I have language to come out as bisexual, to come out as a woman of color. I don't know that I have language around person of faith. So the person of faith, yeah, that's a really interesting thing. The person of faith does not come out easily in conversation. It's actually harder in conversation. It comes out in terms of what I believe, or my spirituality, or kindness, or those kinds of things. But as a formal conversation, whereas because I present as straight because of the relationship I'm in, I make it a point to come out as bisexual. Like I make that point. Yeah, so that's interesting. So it's harder in some ways to come out as a person of faith. Also, because I still don't actually know what that means.
I wonder if, the adage, show, don't tell. There are so many documentaries that are out right now on Netflix and Prime, and all about, exposés of the church this, and these church leaders did this. But you chose to do something that goes right to the heart of the complexities of the Christian and LGBTQ2I plus intersection, and retain all the nuance of it without going into scandal, without going into trauma. And I think the willingness to be balanced and joyful says a lot about the faith that you may have with whatever complications. So I think that's one of the beautiful aspects of this documentary.
Thanks, Daniel. Yeah, and it makes it harder to distribute when you don't do the salacious stories that are being asked for. Yeah, so I appreciate
so even though it makes it harder to distribute, what was that like for you? Because you could have gone after that and maybe had more and had, what was that like deciding which direction to take?
We did a cut like that. I remember myself and the editor did a cut like that, and it felt gross. I was like, we're just going to re-traumatize. And also, I did not want this doc to be about education. It's a love letter to God by us, for us. It's for us. It wasn't about educating. It really was about, as your question came up, it was really about creating a space where it's okay to be a Christian. It's okay to explore that.
If you were going to make this doc today, starting right now, would you do anything differently? What would you do differently?
Damn, you come with the good
I'm
questions,
trying to ask her,
right?
because she asked me so many hard questions. So now it's my turn. This is what's happening right here. If you're wondering, wow, it's my turn now.
Right? That's a good
But
question.
I learned from Sharon. So I learned from you.
What would I do differently?
If anything, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, this is wrong, but I would like to get paid, but no. I think I would take more time. I would take more time. There was a lot of women, particularly in Jamaica, who felt unsafe to speak. And at that point, when we were doing it, I did audio tapes so that they could feel safe. And I would have liked to have taken more time to figure out how I could have incorporated those audio stories into this doc. But it was tough because, they didn't. Yeah, it was tough. It was tough. It was unsafe, even where we were shooting the doc. It was so interesting. It was a day at that hospital, the hospital where they're painting the hospital. And the hospital, Maurice's idea is that we should give back, the queer community should give back. So they were painting that hospital for free. And so I was doing interviews there, but the homophobia that was happening around us was making it difficult for some of the women to tell the stories. And so I think in hindsight, obviously, I would have spent more time, maybe take those women somewhere else just spent more time.
Just to get more of their stories.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. It's hard as a filmmaker to decide what voices will be heard and what aren't.
And it's that aspect again of safety, making
Yeah.
sure people feel
Yeah.
feel safe to tell their stories.
Yeah,
Right.
To make this beautiful, take it out on a boat.
yeah. Expensive.
Let's have a question in front, and then 1, 2, 3.
Thank you so much. It was really wonderful to watch this. I wonder if telling the stories of your participants at all transformed or changed your relationship to your own story.
That's another great question. Are you also a filmmaker? Are you? No. Yes. Yeah, I think honestly, before I did this doc, I would not have taken so much care in not being, I would have gone more towards the salacious kind of stories because I know that they sell. And I think seeing the context and seeing how brave it was for people to tell those stories and how much trauma it was for them to tell it and healing, I feel like I'm a different filmmaker. Like I'm going to trust my gut that is not okay. Yeah.
That's great. There's a question at the back.
I'll try and talk loud.
Oh, I think there's a mic there. Yeah.
I'm getting a microphone. I don't have to talk loud. That's great. First off, absolutely loved the film. I thought it was fantastic. As a member of the queer community, I was really enjoyed this film. And I loved the way you used the soft focus around the people when they were speaking so that their faces came out almost in a three-dimensional, like, I'm here, sort of like that whole viewing thing. I thought that was amazing. I'm wondering, though, at any point, did you consider including a queer senior into it? Like someone who would have been, even in Canada, it would have been illegal for them when they were growing up as a teenager or as a young person to have been gay. So I was just curious about, was that a conscious decision, or you just didn't have someone that came to mind?
Well, I think Maurice would be thrilled that you're not including him as a senior because he is a senior. Yeah, I know. So yeah, he represented that, but I'll let him know. Yeah.
And there's a question up front here as well too. And then another one on the side.
Hi, I was wondering if you could give us some insight into how you found and chose the individuals that you did that were the subject of your film. They were all quite remarkable, exceptional people.
Yeah, D-Lo is a friend. So D-Lo is somebody I've known for years, and he was putting together a performance already, and I asked him if he would share some of his stories around religion. Winnie has also been a friend for years, so I guess I am a person of faith with people of faith friends. So that was easy. Maurice I met after Daniel and I spoke, and then somebody connected me with him. And then when we were in Jamaica, he is the one that put me in touch with Lady Phil, the woman from Britain who runs Black Pride, and the other women that were there. And then I actually put an ad out on Facebook, and that's how I met the other women who are in the film, who, if there was anybody who wanted to talk about being queer and Christian.
Okay, I think there's one more.
Yes.
And two more.
Hey everyone, my name is Trevor. I thought the film was really great. The documentary in many ways is like a series of character sketches, a series of vignettes, and the interviews are very powerful. But I was very interested that how you dealt with the B-roll and the cutaway shots, because it was so interview based. I never felt that it was forced. And can you talk a bit about that process in getting those, when the interviewer is being interviewed, you cut away to things, and I thought you did a really good job, and you should be congratulated from a technical point of view.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you. I think the driving force in that was, how are we going to make God present? So that was the driving force. It's like, well, I guess nature and music and beauty. So how can we keep infusing the thing that connects people to God and to spirituality? So that's what, that's why cutting to oceans and, all of that kind of stuff, and the little kid and, all of that, where it's obvious that God's present and that you couldn't watch this and not see that God is present with queer people. Like, how can you, yeah. I thank you for noticing that. I know.
Yeah, yeah.
Isn't that
It's
crazy?
interesting.
That's why I'm like coming out right now as a person of faith. I know.
That's great.
It's a process.
That's right. There's a question here, and then
I just want to know, is the LGBT on the screen tonight, are those people created by the divine, just like God created Adam, or are they natural?
Are they created by the divine? Yes.
Or are they just naturally?
Well, I think everybody here is created by the divine. Yeah.
But we humans were born with parents, not created. It's biological mix. Unless there is confusion with the DNA that they ship those parents. That is my thought. Thank you.
Thank you. I think divine rules. And when you meet those people on screen, it would be impossible not to feel the divine love of God for them. I think you'd have to work hard at it.
thank you. There's a question in the third row from the back.
Not so much of a question, but I really liked how you kind of presented love in God's eyes, and how Marie said that too, how God would have helped, and it is said that God would help all those who are in need. And I liked how you showed that, as you said, in the divine of the child and all different stuff, and also not to emphasize on trauma. And we've seen that, or a lot of us have seen that or experienced that or heard that, not to capitalize that, but to see the love in, now I forgot her name, in San Francisco, and how love continues, and even the different dimensions of love, even intolerance, and Phil, though her parents may not fully accept her, there's an amount of love. So I just liked how you extended on just past the drama and love.
I appreciate that because their love was beautiful, like just beautiful. And yeah, I don't think you could watch that and not be moved by how much they love each other, this beautiful family that they've created. They now have a second child. You know what I mean? Like that, yeah, thank you, because I agree.
That's great. Well, it doesn't look like we have one more question to the back. Sure. Absolutely.
I don't know if I need a microphone. I've never been said that I have a quiet voice. I'll use it anyways. I just felt loving with Maurice and with his story. Do you still keep in contact with him?
I do. Maurice is an activist, and probably I get an email once a day about something that Maurice is working on or working for. He's actually a lawyer, and he's just switched in the last 2 years from being a lawyer to a nurse. Yeah, I know. With everything or not in the last 2 years, probably in the last 4 years. I think everything going on with COVID, he decided that he would be able to be just I'm going to be a nurse now, and so while I save the world. So yeah, I keep in touch with Maurice. He's really the only one that I keep in touch with the most. Him and D'Lo and Winnie.
That's great. Okay. And one final question, maybe. Sure, absolutely.
Movie that haven't been here?
Oh, yes, great question. Yes, on CBC Gem. It's on CBC. Yeah, it's on CBC Gem right now. And in the States.
So many people I would like to tell
yes.
you have to watch this movie.
Please do. Yes. Thank you. Yeah, on CBC Gem. And in the States, it's just about to come out on, it's called Gay Binge TV.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's huge.
Thanks,
Bravo.
Daniel. Thanks, everybody. I appreciate it.
So
Love.
I have a couple thoughts. What's next for you? Like, what are you working on now, and what's next, and what's coming up for you?
Yeah, James is like, I gotta go. Like, the thing that I'm working on right now is completely different than this documentary. It's a horror film.
A horror film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a horror film. I was like, we need to do some killing in a different way, like in a fun horror kind of way.
Fun horror.
Work
That's
out that
amazing.
stuff. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
I just want to say thank you very much, everybody. Thanks for asking questions. I really appreciate it. And thank you for having me.
Yes.
Yeah. And thank you, Daniel. Yeah.